Welcome to the next tutorial in our missions segment. Let's get straight into it. Come over to your blueprints folder, into NPCs, and we're going to right click on NPC underscore base and create a child blueprint. We're going to call this NPC underscore mission giver. And let's hop into mission giver. Over to the event graph. The same as we did with our merchant child blueprint class, we're going to get our event interact script. Add event interact. So this is the event we created back in the parent class. And if you didn't do the merchants, if you skipped over, then to just show you that, hopefully you've done the NPC tutorials, otherwise this won't make a lot of sense. But this event here will be overridden once it's called in a child blueprint class. So that means that we're not going to be doing any of this. However, we can call these other events should we need them, and we will need them. So we're going to need a lot of variables here. This is essentially going to be the script that checks if we've completed a mission or not, or basically what stage of the mission we're up to. So let's click on the variables and we're going to type in missions given. That's just going to be a boolean. So let's start with that. Let's drag that in, holding control, drag out of that and type in not. So we can use the true out of that branch because that will be the more complicated script of the two. So if the missions have been given, then we're going to fire off the false pin and we'll create a custom event called mission check. That's the event that's actually going to check if a mission is complete or not, or basically what stage it's at. So if the missions have been given out of false, then that's the event we'll fire. Mission check. If the missions haven't been given, however, we're going to check for something else. Getting another branch, we're going to add another variable, and this variable is going to be called prerequisite index. It's going to be an integer and it's going to be an array of integers. And we're also going to click on the eyeball over here because we can play with this variable later. So what we want to check is whether this has anything inside it, because there will be characters there which are happy to give you their missions without other missions being complete. So out of prerequisite index, drag out of that and type in length. Then drag out of length and type in a forward-facing arrow. And we'll plug that into this branch over here. So if this is false, if the prerequisite index length is 0, then that means that we don't have any prerequisites to meet. So that means that we can again move on with giving the missions that this NPC has. So we'll get ourselves another variable that will just be called prerequisites. And that's going to be a boolean, but not an array of booleans. So we'll change that back over to a single variable. And I'll drag that up there to keep it in line with the other variables. We'll drag out a setter of that and we will set that to true. So this boolean will be if the prerequisites have been completed. Now, if you've done the NPC tutorials, then you'll know that we have a conversation index. We can use that conversation index here. So let's grab that conversation index. If we just type in conversation, we can set conversation index. Our conversation index has 6 possible outcomes. The first is if the prerequisites haven't been met. So basically, if there are prerequisites and those missions haven't been finished. So we'll put that over there. If they have been met, then we go to conversation index 2. So let's drag that up there and plug that in there. And that's going to come out of false, and we'll fill out the rest of that in a moment. Now, as for if we do have any prerequisites that are required to be finished, the next part of the script is going to require a for each loop with break. So basically what this does is when we call the break function, the for each loop stops firing. So we'll plug that into true here. Let's grab the prerequisite index and plug that into the array. Then we're going to need our hero reference. And if you remember back in our NPC base, we have that hero reference there. So because we're firing off the parent script over here, that yellow node there, everything inside the event begin play here will fire, which is just our casting and setting of the reference. So out of that, we want to get our missions. And then out of that array, let's get, and we just need a reference. And the reference to the mission, pay attention to this one. We don't want to get the array index. We don't care what number prerequisite this is in this array. We care about the actual array element. So if we have 3 missions that are prerequisites, but those missions are 4, 5, and 6, we want the numbers 4, 5, and 6, not 1, 2, and 3, or 0, 1, and 2, because it's an array. So drag array element and plug that in there. And then out of that, we will break S mission. And with the drop down, we just want complete. So we'll grab another branch, plug that into complete, select the broken struct, hide unconnected pins, and then we'll plug the loop body into the branch. So let's use our example of mission 4, for example. We need mission 4 to be complete before we can move on to, say, mission 5. So this checks mission 4 to see if it's complete according to the array inside the hero. And if mission 4 is complete, then we'll alt drag out our prerequisites and we can set that to true because that mission's finished. And then if it's not, then we will set our prerequisite to false. Then we'll create another custom event, call it break loop. We want to plug in the event on this side, so it goes into the break. And if we run into any mission, if there was 100 missions here, as soon as we find one mission that isn't complete, then we can break the loop. So we'll type in break loop, call that function, and plug that in there. Then once that loop is broken, we come over to the completed area. So it still fires off to completed in the loop. And out of that, we're going to check if the prerequisites have been met. So dragging that Boolean in and attaching it to a branch over here. I know it's a little bit messy. I'll see if I can make a little bit more room. There we are. So out of the completed of the for each loop with break, we will plug that into the branch there. And if our prerequisites are not met and we come back false on this, then we will set the conversation index to 1 and we will start conversation, call the function, which is over here. So we don't want to overwrite that event in the parent class. We want to use that event because now this will fire off the start conversation dialog and all the script we designed there before. But if the prerequisites have been met, then we want to set the conversation index to 2. So we're going to need a few reroutables to make more sense of this. I don't want to use events just to jump around for the hell of it. So I'm going to drag this guy over here. So I know it's a bit of a travel, but hopefully you can keep up. So we want to set that conversation index over here to 2. We don't need to set prerequisites again. We want to keep it nearby though. We don't want to have that variable just floating off there in the middle of a reroutable. So out of for each loop with break, out of the branch, out of true, plug into conversation index 2 again. We'll grab another reroutable. So it should look something like that. And then if we are going from conversation index 2, we also want to do a mission check. Now, if you also remember, we have another instance for if we have already finished the mission beforehand, which was conversation index 3, and that's going to fire off the end over here. So we need another variable, and this is going to be called conditions met. So conditions met is going to refer specifically to the mission that we're giving. So I'm going to hit B to get a branch, and we want to check if conditions met is true. And then we'll also call refresh dialog. The function, not the event. We don't need to override the event. Then we will throw in conversation index 3 there. So we completed the mission before we met the NPC. And then out of that, we will start conversation. Again, the function, not the event. And if you're unsure of what the conversation index means, you can come back over here to data click on d_dialog, and here is the little cheat sheet I've given for what they will fire off, which is exactly what's going to happen when we have a mission. So basically we're telling the missions to talk to the dialogue system. Prerequisites not met will be, if this boolean comes back false, set conversation index 1. Giving the missions will happen at prerequisites being met or prerequisites not being existent, so that'll fire off there. And then if we've completed it prior, we'll add that to the end as well. So the way I imagine it is that your NPC would give their mission and then they would go, oh, you've already completed it. And we'll set this up later so that this gets added to the conversation array and then this gets added to the conversation array. But we're just on time. We'll leave it there for now, and we will continue on in the next episode.